Gagandeep, we have caller number 2 in the attendee list. Can we check caller number 2's microphone and request they identify themselves, please?
Yes, this is Gurdeep Kaur from Planning. Sorry, I just signed in from my cell phone, so this is why it's blocked ID.
Okay, thank you, Gurdeep Kaur. We'll make note of that. Caller number 2.
Thank you.
And it's Mayor Brown. I've logged on virtually to this meeting tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Brown.
You're coming through loud and clear.
Do we have a quorum yet?
I see 6 members present, although the mayor is not counted for quorum for standing committees, so we will have to wait for one more member.
Who are the members there?
Currently, and we'll confirm this when we do get underway with roll call, I see Councillor Medeiros remote, Councillor Fortini remote, Councillor Santos and Councillor Vicente in person, Councillor Singh remote, and yourself.
Okay. We just need one more then.
That's correct. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the scheduled 7 p.m. meeting of the Planning and Development Committee of the City of Brampton. This meeting is scheduled to start at 7 p.m. We do require a quorum of 6 members of the committee to be present for the meeting to proceed. At this point in time, I'm just verifying, I do not see a quorum present. I do see present in chambers is Councillor Vicente, Councillor Santos. Present online is Chair Medeiros, Councillor Fortini, and Councillor Singh. The mayor is also present, but as mentioned earlier, under Council's procedure bylaw, the mayor is not counted for quorum for standing committee meetings. So we will just wait a moment to ensure that we do have another member joining, and then we will get underway as soon as we have the 6th member of the committee joining. There is a grace period of 30 minutes for the committee to achieve quorum, and we're hoping that we will achieve quorum so the meeting can proceed. So we'll provide an update shortly. Thank you.
I just got a message from Councillor Pelesci. He's attempting to log on, so I believe there'll be quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do see Councillor Pelesci joining now. We'll just wait for him to verify. Councillor Pelesci, we just wish to verify that you can hear okay.
I'm good, Peter. You can hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So, Chair Medeiros, it looks like there is a quorum present. We will confirm that during roll call, so when you're ready to proceed, we can begin tonight's meeting.
Thank you very much. As we begin today's meeting, we would like to acknowledge that we're gathering here today on the treaty territories of the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, and before them the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron, and Wendat. We also acknowledge that many First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and other global Indigenous people that now call Brampton their home. We are honored to live, work, and enjoy this land. Good evening. Welcome to our meeting of Brampton's Planning and Development Committee. We will begin the meeting with the City Clerk calling the roll for attendance at tonight's meeting.
Members of committee, I will call your name. Please indicate your presence. Councillor Santos. Present. He is present. Councillor Vicente. Here. He is present. Councillor Willens. Councillor Willens is not present. Councillor Pelesci.
Present.
Councillor Bowman has sent his regrets for illness. Councillor Fortini.
I'm here, Pierre.
Councillor Singh.
Present.
Councillor Dillon. Councillor Dillon is not present. Mayor Brown is present, and Chair Medeiros.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is approval of the agenda. Does any member wish to add a business item to tonight's meeting?
Mr. Chair, just a few updates. There was a further revised agenda that was published late this afternoon. It includes 2 additional pieces of correspondence. 11.6 on tonight's agenda is correspondence from Joel Farber, Fogler Rubinoff on behalf of Maple Lodge Farms, dated July 22nd, and this is in regard to item 7.6 on tonight's agenda, zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision from Glenn Schnarr and Associates in Ward 6. And we have additional correspondence identified on the agenda online as 11.7. This is correspondence from David Riley, SGL Planning and Design, and this is in regards to item 7.8 on tonight's agenda and related delegation item 6.4, an official plan amendment and Main Street North Development Permit System bylaw amendment for Bristol Place Corporation, Solmar Development Corporation, 199 to 221 Main Street North and 4 Market Square in Ward 1. And those are the updates, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any more. Councillor Singh.
Peter, I'm just turning on my iPad, so I'm just going off memory quickly. But there was a request to defer an item from Schlegel.
You, Mr. Chair, yes, that would be item correspondence item 11. Just bear with me here. I believe it's correspondence item 11.2 regarding delegation item 6.3 on tonight's agenda and the corresponding report. Yeah.
I would ask to move that now, as the residents are also okay with that, and we can defer that until staff and the applicant and residents are okay to bring it forward.
So through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, are we deferring it, which is postponing it to?
Sorry, referring it back to staff.
Referring it back to staff, okay, for further consideration.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I see no further speakers, I do have a motion moved by Councillor Singh.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm on the board.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Fortuna.
Yeah, I wanted to defer the part where the report is sent it back to staff on the limited height and come back to the next planning meeting.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Fortini, can you clarify which item?
I think it was 11 point. I can't actually see my screen that well. I'm up north. We did go through it today. It was a report from staff for unlimited height on high rise.
So it's report item 7.3.
7.3. That's the one. To refer back to the next planning meeting, please.
So that's the report on unlimited height and density. There's additional correspondence related to this identified as 11.3 on the agenda. So the motion is to defer it to the next planning committee meeting, which right now is scheduled for August 22nd, or the meeting after that, which is September 12th.
Thank you. August or September, whatever the staff prefers. It's fine.
September 12th may be better, staff are providing advice on.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, then the motion would be, as part of approval of the agenda, is to defer 7.3 and correspondence 11.3 to the September 12th Planning and Development Committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a motion moved by Councillor Singh. Is anyone opposed? I see none. The motion carries. Declaration of interest on the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? I see none. The clerk will so note for the meeting. Our next item is consent motion process. I will read out the items. Item 7.1, staff report to create a walkway between Amicus Seniors Building and Hodgson Street, Glenn Schnarr and Associates, Amicus Senior Lifestyle, Main Street South, Ward 3. In consent, item 7.2, staff report regarding amendments to Schedule B of the building bylaw. In consent, 7.3 has been deferred. 7.5, proposed consultation plan for developing Brampton's inclusionary zoning framework. In consent, item 7.6, staff report regarding application to amend the zoning bylaw for proposed draft plan of subdivision Glenn Schnarr and Associates 1212949 Interior Incorporated Parking, part of Lot 1, Concession 5, Ward 6. in consent. Item 7.7, staff report regarding application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaws, Sejeki Planning Incorporated, Luxor Development Corporation, 151 Main Street North, northwest corner of Church Street West and Main Street North, Ward 1, in consent. Staff report regarding application for temporary zoning bylaw, Blackthorn Development Corporation, 2458171 Ontario Incorporated, 3420 Queen Street East, Ward 8, in consent. Item 7.11, staff report regarding application to amend the official plan, secondary plan and zoning bylaw, Chicon Retirement Village Incorporated, CADEFCON Limited, Ward 8, in consent. 7.13, staff report regarding application for a draft plan of subdivision Glen Schnar, concession 12, south of Countryside and west of Coleraine Drive, Ward 10, in consent. 7.14, staff report regarding application to amend the official plan zoning bylaw, 1248048 Canada, Umbria Developer, north side of Queen Street West, west side of Chinguacousy Road, Queen Street West, Ward 5, in consent. Item 7.15, staff report regarding city-initiated official plan amendment, administrative authority bylaw amendment, expanded delegated authority, in consent. Minutes, Brampton Heritage Board, in consent. Correspondence from Laura Hall, Director of Corporate Services, Town Clerk, Town of Caledon, request to modify the Peel 2051 official plan, in consent. 11.3 has been deferred. 11.5 to create a walkway. Oh, I think we delegation. So, clerk, if you can just clarify, we do see that there's a consent, but I do see here, is this a delegation?
11.5 is just correspondence in regards.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's in consent. So I guess I'll move it back to you. Yep.
So there is additionally the correspondence 11.6, which relates to item 7.6, which was added to the consent motion. That's the correspondence from Joel Farber on behalf of Maple Lodge Farms.
Okay.
So if committee wishes to consider to add that to consent. And then also there was, excuse me, item 7.4 in the agenda was not listed for the consent motion as there was a delegation, but the delegation is from the applicant in the event there's any questions. And this is item 7.4, an application to amend the official plan zoning bylaw, Weston Consulting, 2757566 Ontario at 10254 Ontario Street North, north of Beauvais, west of your Ontario, and Ward 2. So if it's just the applicant to delegate if there's any questions, so that could be considered for the consent motion as well, unless committee wishes to discuss that item.
Okay, does anyone have any issue with those two items being listed for consent? Okay, so I'll hand it over to you to Peter to take the vote. So I do have a motion moved by Councilor Fortini.
Point of clarification.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, the clerk, 7.12 was also referred back to staff, correct, with the 11.2? Because that's the actual report.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, it wasn't item 7.1. That's what I heard. Sorry, it was
7.12.
Yeah, 7.12 and 11.2. The correspondence was referred back to staff.
Okay, perfect. I saw 11.2, just confirming 7.12 was also part of it. Thank you.
Okay, so I do have a motion by Councilor Fortini regarding the consent motion, and I'll hand it over to you, Peter, to conduct the vote.
Through you, Mr. Chair, all in favor of the consent motion, please indicate. Councillor Santos.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Vasante.
Yes.
It's a yes. Councillor Willens is absent. Councillor Paleshi.
Yes.
Councillor Bowman is ill. Councillor Fortini.
Yes, yes, Peter.
Councillor Singh.
Yes.
Councillor Dillon. Oh, Councillor Dillon.
Yep.
It's a yes. Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Chair Medeiros.
Yep.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now we move on to our statutory public meetings, and we have two. First one is this 5.1 staff report regarding application to amend the zoning bylaw, Knuff Group, 210, 220 Steeles Avenue West, west of Ontario, McMurtry Avenue South, Ward 3. And I will hand it over to Kelly Henderson for our presentation. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Good evening, committee members. Members of the public and city staff, my name is Kelly Henderson, and I'm the planner assigned to process and review the subject application. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public and seek feedback on the application filed by Connect Group. Next slide, please. The subject property is located within Ward 3 at 210 and 220 Steeles Avenue West in the west end of Brampton. The nearest major intersection is Main Street and Steeles, and the property is located west of Hurontario Street and east of McMurtry Avenue. Next slide, please. Area context. So to the north, we have the Connect Park. To the south, we have existing single detached dwellings. To the east, we have Shoppers World, which is slated for redevelopment. And to the west, we have existing single detached dwellings. Next slide, please. Connect Group has submitted a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the intensification of the subject property to facilitate two 37-story apartment buildings with six story podiums, one 26-story apartment building with an 8-story winged podium, and 3 blocks of 3.5-story stacked townhouses. Next slide, please. This slide is showing a rendering of the property, including both the existing and proposed development. Next slide, please. The official plan designates the subject property for residential. The residential designation permits residential land uses, including a full range of dwelling types ranging from single detached dwellings to high-rise apartments. An amendment to the official plan is not required. Next slide, please. The subject property is within two secondary plan areas. For the first half of the property is within the Hurontario secondary plan and is designated as high density 1 with a height transition. An amendment to this secondary plan is not required. Next slide, please. The other half of the property is within the Flowertown secondary plan and designated as high density. An amendment to the secondary plan is not required. Next slide, please. The subject property is zoned residential apartment, which permits apartment dwellings up to 22 stories and religious institutions. A zoning bylaw amendment is required to facilitate the proposal. Next slide, please. The applicant proposes to amend the zoning bylaw from the current apartment zone to a site-specific zone in order to recognize several site-specific provisions, such as total number of units, maximum lot coverage, floor space index, and the height. Next slide, please. Prior to finalizing recommendations to Council, this application will be further evaluated for consistency with the Planning Act Provincial Policy Statement, conformity with the Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region Appeal Official Plan, and the City of Brampton Official Plan. Next slide, please. At this time, preliminary issues that will need to be addressed include the appropriateness of the density and compatibility with the surrounding land uses, how to best integrate the proposed development with the existing community. These issues and others that are raised will be addressed in a future recommendation report. Next slide, please. Next steps. So the application was deemed complete on May 16th, 2022. Staff will continue to review the application, including reviewing comments from the public and technical comments, and advance a final recommendation report to Council for a decision. Issues raised will be addressed in the future recommendation report. Prior to the recommendation report being brought forward, staff will contact and follow up with those residents who have spoken, written in, or advised of an interest in monitoring the proposal. Next slide, please. The report associated with tonight's meeting is available online, and the presentation will be available online shortly. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact myself, my manager, or the applicant. The applicant is Kevin Freeman from Connect, whose information is on the screen. And thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, do we have any delegations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have one registered delegation, and there may be more in person in the chambers. The first registered delegation is Rajeshri Basu. Rajeshri, you can come forward, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. So whenever you're ready, you can start.
So good evening, everyone. Those who are here, as well those who have joined in, logged in remotely. I would like to thank all of you for giving me this opportunity to present myself here today. And my name is Rajeshri Basu. I'm the property owner along with my husband of 48 Sheldrake Court, the property which is very adjacent to 210 Stills, the Canef property. And my backyard shares the same property line, fence line with Canef's 210, the upper parking lot. So that's where I live. That's the fourth house from the catwalk which takes Sheldrake Court to Pagebrook, that street, the small street. Saying that, I had been in this property for last 15 years. From 2007, we are living here. We do not have any plan to move, to sell, or to rent this property. Saying that, in this age group, I am almost 55 and my husband is almost 65 now. So we are planning to stay here for the rest of our life. When we bought this property, we had a vision that there wouldn't be any houses, any building behind our backyard, saying that this is a parking lot and that is not a place where properties could be built. So here I understand Canef has a request for amending the existing zoning bylaw. So I'm referring to the current bylaw by which at that time when I purchased the property and invested the money, that was existing. So for the last 15 years, we have invested a lot of money in this property, basically all our savings, all our earning to maintain the house so that we can live here for the rest of the life. And if this property is now developed to a 26-storied building, which will be just behind my backyard, just behind my living room. Again, I should not forget to say that all the windows of my house opens to that side. There is no window in the front side of the house. I spend most of the time at home, partly working from home, and with my health condition, I cannot go out of the house too much. I have severe lungs condition, losing a portion of my lungs through surgery. That means that this development can create a lot of pollution for me. I'm just surviving with the greeneries at the back. I spend a lot of time in the yard and on the deck. And here, with this building coming up, I will have to live under the shadow, which means that my teeny tiny house will be just without sunlight. The eastern side will be all covered up, and the deck and the house, there wouldn't be any privacy. Like from those buildings, they can right away see inside my living room, my kitchen, my dining table, my deck, my yard, my bedroom. The only way to survive would be put the curtains and stay in dark. So that's a huge thing for me and my family. Family means me, my husband, my son time to time. I'm not even considering him. The air will not be what it is now. So those are very, very major concerns here. I have concerns about the construction. It will not be done in a month or two, I'm sure. With that kind of construction, it will go on for probably many years. The noise and the traffic. The traffic at this time, we have a lot of cars coming to the underground parking behind the house, and that's okay, we live with that. With more than 1,200 residential units, there would be another 1,000 cars adding to this. So already a high density population. There, if we are adding more population, what will happen to the traffic? Can we drive on stills? Probably not. I have a long list. I cannot go through that in this 5 minutes time, but I have at least 15 of my neighbors who have shared the same problems with me here. And if I'm given a permission, then I can get a petition from them. All signed up, we can put it before the city. And I'm here today to understand how we should go about it, but definitely it's a huge, huge concern. I think I'm already up time. I also have one neighbor who's there in that house for last 40 years. She's over 90. She cannot move and come here. She has also expressed her concerns through me, the same concerns she has. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I'm just going to ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to delegate in person on this item. If you do wish to come forward to delegate, there is a sign-in logbook just on the table, just by the microphone. If you can sign in, please. And if anybody else wishes to speak, they can come and sign in as well before they come to the podium to speak. So, Mr. Chair, we do have one person that's just signing in, and then they'll come to the podium to speak. So welcome. Please state your name just for the record, and then you have up to 5 minutes.
So my name is Ambrose Fernandez, and I live at 50 Sheldrake Court. Okay, so I know this is very formal. I haven't been at a meeting like this, so just bear with me. Like I've also, bought this place, 50 Sheldrake Court, how it existed without the zoning being amended, and we like the place, and that's why I bought the house there. Open space, we have those buildings there, but we came to terms with it. And we bought it based on that bylaw. Now, Kenef wants to amend the bylaw and bring 1,200 more units in that such a small area. As my neighbor has just said, I second exactly whatever she has said. That's perfectly correct. The traffic is horrendous on Steeles and McMurchie, with the existing population right there. This 26-story building is going to be right on top of my house. I have no privacy. I'm actually scared because people can now look down and view when I leave the house, when I'm coming in, who's going, who's coming. My house has already been broken into. My car has been already broken into. And I feel like there's no privacy. It's going to be dark. There's no proper, we have a deck there too. And I feel like, I wouldn't want to go on the deck because there's so many thousands, so many hundreds of people looking at me. When we bought this place, I thought this place was already done. It was not a jungle. It was not an open space that I thought would ever be developed. It was already done, complete. It was built. Structure was built, cemented. Everything was done. There was no thought of anything being now developed further. So with this amendment now, I wish I knew this could have been done. Then I wouldn't have bought a place like that. There's so many other places, when I bought, so many other places I could buy. The reason why I bought there is because of the openness, and everything was already done. Nothing more was going to come up. And basically that's what it is. I'm okay.
Thank you. And just confirming there's nobody else that wishes to speak on this item. So, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you. There is no correspondence on this item.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Fortini to move the presentation and delegations. Or anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. Our next item is item 5.2, application to amend the zoning bylaw, Kendufcon 0, Old Castlemore Road, between Clarkway Ward 10. And I will hand it over to Andrew Ramsamy, our development planner from Building Economic Development Department. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, members of the committee, members of the public, and my colleagues here with me tonight. My name is Andrew Ramsamy, and I'm the planner assigned to process and review the subject application. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public and seek feedback on the application filed by 2820453 Ontario Inc. and Kendufcon Limited. This is the second public meeting being held for the subject application. The first public meeting was held on June 6, 2022. This application is being presented for a second time following an administrative error with the June 6 public mail-out letter that incorrectly described the proposal as a temporary zoning bylaw amendment for 3 years, whereas the application is for a full zoning bylaw amendment. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, this slide. The The subject property is located in Ward 10 and is municipally known as 0 Old Castmore Road in the east part of Brampton. The nearest major intersection is Clarkway Drive and Castmore Road, and the property is located on the north side of Old Castmore Road between Clarkway Drive and Highway 50. Next slide, please. Surrounding land uses include to the north agricultural lands, and to the northwest are lands part of Block Plan Area 47-1, proposed for residential uses as part of application OZS 2021-0060. To the east are lands currently being used for outdoor storage, as well as a single detached dwelling and agricultural land further east. To the south are lands proposed for future employment and commercial uses as part of application OZS 2020-0010. And to the west is Rainbow Creek Natural Heritage System. Beyond the Natural Heritage System are lands proposed for residential uses as part of application OZS 2021-0050, which is also located in Block Plan Area 47-1. Next slide, please. The applicant's development proposal for a zoning bylaw amendment is to permit a site-specific industrial 2 zone, floodplain, and open space zone to facilitate the development of an industrial building of approximately 2,415 square meters. The building will be approximately 11 meters in height with 27 car parking spaces and 49 trailer parking spaces. The proposed development will also be subject to site plan approval. Next slide, please. The official plan designates the property for industrial, open space, and special study area. The industrial designation permits light to heavy industrial uses such as manufacturing, processing, repair, and service, warehouse and distribution. The open space designation indicates major open space features. These features include public and private open spaces, valley land, watercourse corridors, wetlands, and woodlands, this case being Rainbow Creek. An amendment to the official plan is not required. Next slide, please. The secondary plan designates the property for logistic, warehouse, and transportation, as well as valley land. Lands designated logistics, warehouse, transportation permit uses which include prestige industrial uses and those listed in section 5.3.7 of this plan. Outdoor storage of goods and materials will be permitted subject to the location and screening criteria contained within the implementing zoning bylaw. An amendment to the secondary plan is not required. Next slide, please. The current zoning for the property is agricultural. The agricultural zone permits agricultural uses as defined by section 5 of this bylaw, as well as non-agricultural uses such as single detached dwellings and group homes. An amendment to the zoning bylaw is required to redesignate the land to the industrial 2 zone, floodplain zone, and open space zone as proposed. Next slide, please. The applicant proposes to amend the zoning bylaw from the current agricultural zone to a site-specific industrial 2 zone, open space zone, and floodplain zone. The graphic on the screen illustrates the extent of each proposed designation as the industrial 2 zone is bordered by the floodplain zone to the west, with the open space area on the north side. The industrial designation proposes to permit a number of industrial uses, including but not limited to a warehouse, non-obnoxious industrial uses involving the manufacture, storage of goods and materials in the open, storage, and the repair and rental of equipment. For a complete list of the proposed uses of the zoning bylaw amendment, please refer to Appendix 8 of the information report. Next slide, please. Prior to finalizing recommendations to Council, this application will be further evaluated for consistency with the Planning Act, the provincial policy statement, conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region Appeal official plan, and the City of Brampton official plan. Next slide, please. At this time, current items under review that will need to be addressed include determining appropriate noise mitigation measures to the adjacent land uses, encroachment within Rainbow Creek corridor, and verification of the sustainability score and opportunities to increase the site score. These issues and others that are raised will be addressed in a future recommendation report. Next slide, please. next steps with the application was deemed complete on March 29th, 2022. Staff will continue the review of the application, including reviewing comments from the public and technical comments. The next steps are following that will be to advance a final recommendation report to council for a decision. Issues raised will be addressed in the recommendation report. Staff will contact and follow up with those residents who have spoken, written in, or advised of an interest in monitoring the proposal. Next slide, please. The report associated with tonight's meeting is available online. The presentation will be available online shortly. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact myself, my manager, or the applicant. The applicant is Maria Jones from KinDevCon Limited, representing the owner, 2820453 Ontario Inc. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, City Clerk. Do we have any delegations?
Mr. Chair, we don't have any pre-registered delegations and no correspondence. I'm just going to look into the audience. Is there anyone who wishes to delegate to committee on this item? And I don't see anybody, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So I do have are there any questions from members of committee? I see none. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Dillon to move the presentation, staff report. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. We now move on to, I believe item 6.1. Is that the delegation, City Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's possible delegations for a site-specific amendment to the sign bylaw for Gay Lee at 7855 Heritage Road in Ward 6, and the staff report 7.16 on the agenda. There are no registered delegations for this item. And
okay.
There is nobody in the audience. I don't see anybody who wishes to speak to this item.
Okay, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Palashi to approve the staff report. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. We dealt with item 6.2. Item 6.3 has been deferred. Our next item is
6.4 is the next item, which are delegations. Through you, Mr. Chair, sorry, there's registered delegates from Mario Peverini, David Riley. There is correspondence from David Riley as 11.7 on today's agenda, Barry Graziani and Tom Willis on behalf of the applicant. And the item is the application to amend the official plan and Main Street North Development Permit System, SGL Planning and Design, Bristol Place, Solmar Development Corporation, 199 to 221 Main Street North, and 34 to 44 Thomas Street and 4 Market Street in Ward 1.
okay, so I'll hand it over to you to administer the delegations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of committee. Happy to be here. My name is David Riley from SGL Planning and Design, and I am speaking on behalf of all those individuals you just mentioned. I am one of the representatives, SGL Planning and Design, representing the owner of the lands that we're speaking to today and the proposed development. I'm joined here tonight in person with some of the owners, Giuseppe Paolucelli and Angela Murata, as well as representatives of the owners, Reno Mustacci, and then online, Muro Peverini. Muro, hope you're feeling better. And then also the architect Barry Graziani is here today, and online we also have a transportation consultant, Tom Willis, and me if there's any questions. But I did want to speak to the correspondence that I submitted in relation to this item. And, generally I just wanted to start off by saying we've reviewed the staff report and the implementing documents, so the official plan amendment and the development permit bylaw amendment, and we're generally satisfied with staff's recommendations. And we really want to thank staff for all their hard work and working with our team through the development application and really getting to where we're at today. But I just wanted to address one key change to the development permit bylaw that is requested. It's outlined in my letter, but I just wanted to speak to that today. And this relates to the minimum required front yard setback from Main Street North. So the draft bylaw that's before you requires a minimum 3-meter setback from the property line along Main Street North for the first 3 stories, and then it steps back to 5 meters and 7 meters. These setbacks, as proposed, would significantly impact the podiums of both proposed buildings, as well as the location of Tower A, as is designed and as we've come forward with. So as such, we respectfully request that, as outlined in our letter, that the bylaw be amended as noted in our letter to permit a 0-meter setback for the first 6 stories and then a 3-meter setback for the stories above that. And I just wanted to explain some of the rationale behind this. So first of all, the proposal includes significant land dedication. So beyond, or part of what's there now, what's part of the properties, part of this application will be dedicating generally a 5.5-meter road widening, which would become part of the Main Street North public realm in front of the property. So this would be, it would contribute to a significantly expanded public realm and really contribute to the vision for Main Street North in terms of a beautiful, vibrant street, pedestrian corridor. The 0-meter setback of the podiums is really important to fulfill the intended vision of Main Street North and represents an appropriate interface between the public and private realms. And I want to speak to that a little bit. So generally, the podiums, as designed at 0-meter setback, align with, for example, the front of the building, so the front of the porch, the covered porch of the dwelling at 195 Main Street North. This is immediately adjacent to the site, which is the southeast corner of the block. Of the block, the northwest corner of the intersection of Main and Market, but the southeast corner of the block. The podiums of both towers have been designed with articulated facades, including at grade. So where doors are leading directly to commercial units, the building is articulated. So at the main floor, the doors, when they swing open, they're not actually swinging into the public realm. They would still be on private property. The towers are staggered. So Tower B is set back further from Main Street than Tower A. So this adds depth and visual interest to the street. And the proposal includes a POP space. So that's a privately owned, publicly accessible space on private land, obviously, facilitating pedestrian movement through the site, and adding that active amenity space and really facilitating directional movement from Main Street through the site and onto the other side. Really a significant amount of work has gone into the establishment of the proposed setbacks, including changes made in response to comments received, and we've undergone a lot of public consultation. We've had a public open house, the public meeting, and comments from the city. And notably, this included a big increase to the setback on the north side. So the north side yard setback increased. Lastly, City Council has already considered and adopted a request from the owner for a minister's zoning order on the site. And this was requested on the basis of the concept that's before you today at a 0-meter setback. For context, originally when we came into the pre-application, a 3-meter setback was proposed from the existing property line. But now that a 5.5-meter road widening is required, the 0-meter setback is, so you're still getting a much bigger setback than originally proposed on this site. So all combined, the proposal, in our opinion, and certainly my opinion, represents an appropriate relationship to Main Street North, and we respectfully request that the bylaw be amended as noted in our letter. And we're available to answer any questions tonight.
Okay, thank you. City Clerk, do we have any other delegations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do not. David was speaking on behalf of everyone that was identified.
Oh, okay, that was listed. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? I see none. So there is a motion, and I believe, Councillor Fortini, do you want to move the request by the delegation?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll move it.
Okay, so is that reflected here, City Clerk?
Mr. Chair, it is not. So presuming the request from the delegate through the correspondence is that recommendation 5 of the staff report, which is the amendment to the Main Street North Development Permit System bylaw, where it says generally in accordance with the amending Development Permit System bylaw attached as Appendix 3 to this report be adopted. if the intent of Councillor Fortini's motion is and be further amended to reflect the setbacks that are set out in the letter, and I think it's
Yeah.
Charlotte has copied it right into the recommendation, so it would be I think Charlotte's just filling out the words right now. So the effect of the amendment as set out in the delegation is to amend the setbacks from Main Street North to 0 meters for the first 6 stories of both buildings, and then I believe it's 3 meters for any portion of the building above the 6th story of both buildings.
Okay, thank you. Is that fine with you, Councillor Fortini?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Fortini with the proposed amendment. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. The motion carries. Thank you. We go now on to our next.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just also as part of that motion, we'll be receiving correspondence 11.7.
Okay, and receiving the correspondence as well. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. We now go on to our item 6.5. City Clerk, do we have our delegations?
6.5 through you, Mr. Chair, was dealt with.
Okay.
It was dealt with as part of the consent motion. It was the applicant that was delegating. The next is 6.6, a delegation from Tushar Mehta, Brampton resident, on the destruction of Huttonville Forest, permanent, and irreversible ecological implications, alternatives for developer information. And Tushar, I believe, is present.
Tushar's not here yet. He is on his way, along with Julie Harlow. Is there any way we could defer this for another 15 minutes and come back to it? If not, I will speak.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we've been advised by somebody in the audience that Tushar is not currently present. He's about 15 minutes away. So I suggest that committee may wish to go on to its other business and then come back if there's appropriate time.
Okay, is there anyone on committee opposed to this? I see none, so we'll proceed and go back to it once the delegate is available.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Our next item, 6.7.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
And we do have a delegation from Mansour Amr Sultan, Brampton resident, and this is in regard to staff report items 7.10 and correspondence 11.4 on an application to amend the zoning bylaw, proposed draft plan of subdivision, Candivcon, D-Brand Investment Corporation, 11772 McLaughlin Road in Ward 6. Is Mansour present? Yeah. And Mansour is present. He's just coming down to the microphone. So welcome, Mansour. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. The thing it is the same things is come for the committee meeting last year, 2021. But after that, I did not see any changes or what is the objections or taken action about this. Because you know that clearly the McLaughlin Road, only the part of area after the Wainwright to Mayfield, it is single road. If it is approved for this townhouse dwelling, maybe it will be making a lot of traffic congestions. And Mayfield, it is need to be developed if it is comes this townhouse project. And after in the Caledon, the McLaughlin was already making bigger. I think it's a 4-line or 2-line or something. The construction is going on. It is not come to the use of the public. So the main thing need to be widen the McLaughlin south of Mayfield, and also Mayfield need to be widened once it's come for this townhouse project. And the thing it is the townhouse project, there is no any parking facilities for the people, and I don't know what about the fire road. Maybe it is a single entry and exit, or I don't know exactly. So it's need to be considered. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, that concludes the delegation. So committee has before it report 7.10 and correspondence item 11.4.
Okay, are there any questions regarding the report? I see none, so I do have a staff report moved by Councillor Palashi. Is there anyone opposed? And moving the delegation as well. Is there anyone opposed? I see none, motion carries. We now move on to, so that's 7.1's been in consent. 7.2, I believe in consent. 7.3 has been deferred.
Mr. Chair, the balance of the staff reports have been addressed under item section 7. So we can go back, and the delegate for 6.6, Dr. Tushar Mehta, is present for his delegation. So we'll bring that delegation forward. And just to remind committee, this is an item on the agenda for which there is no staff report. There was a similar delegation that was provided at the Environment Advisory Committee previously and Committee of Council. And please go ahead, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Hi. Greetings to city councilors, mayor, and all the city staff here. My name is Dr. Tushar Mehta. I'm talking about a forest that's going to be paved along the banks of the Credit River. You can go to the next slide. We call it Huttonville Forest. Next slide, please. So we are at a very pivotal moment in human history in terms of the global ecological disaster that's folding before us within Canada and everywhere else. And it seems everywhere we always pay lip service to these problems, creating false solutions that sort of game the system, and at the end of the day, business as usual and profits trump everything. Next slide, please. In this particular case, if you speak to Ken McDonald from Save Huttonville Forest, there's been a large area of land that's been given away to the developer that's worth millions of dollars. Next slide, please. And it has major consequences because it's right on the bank of the Credit River, and it's a forest and a wetland altogether. Massive homes will be developed there, which means that there'll be less housing per unit of land, and we know that there's a housing crisis right now. The amount of climate change due to the development and for ongoing heating and cooling of these massive houses will be huge, as well as the land use change and ultimately the biodiversity loss. By land use change, I mean the loss of the forest and wetland itself. And there's a big luxury development, which means big money for very few people at the expense of the environment. Next slide, please. In terms of climate change, I mentioned the massive carbon impact of the homes themselves, but also from the destruction of the forest itself. That releases carbon, and also the forest as it grows, because it's a regenerating forest, would store thousands of tons of carbon per year in and of itself. Next slide, please. But there's also a local biodiversity and ecosystem impact. There are endangered species there. There's also non-endangered species which do have a great value as well. Trees, amphibians, mammals, birds. There's eagles there, deer that used to be there more, turtles, frogs. The forest and wetland. Next slide, please. And the major thing happening here is that this is going to be the first cut right into the actual Credit Valley corridor. So when you have these small ecosystems that are left, they need to be connected for species to survive, for them to thrive, for biodiversity to be maintained through connected pieces of wildlife. Wild areas. So deer and other species need a wide swath of intact forest to safely and freely move up and down the entire Credit Valley River system. This cutting so close and cutting right to the edge of the cliff will be the first thing that cuts the actual Credit Valley ecosystem. Next. There's zero mention of this in the ecological assessments that are made and paid for by the developer. And that's a conflict of interest because the developer actually pays and funds the people who make the environmental assessment. Next slide, please. And so there's problems when you look at this report. The reports that do the ecological assessment minimize the value of the forest. They have no mention of the value of regenerating forests, which is what this is. They say there's lots of non-native trees, but not emphasizing the fact that these are still trees and not paved over areas. There are also rare species of indigenous trees that are there. They emphasize this problem with a minor amount of debris left over and it's kind of exaggerated. And this idea of mitigation, that, hey, we'll mitigate this somewhere else. But that's an inherently flawed ecological concept, that you can destroy intact forests or an intact environment and then mitigate it somehow elsewhere. This is a big environmental fallacy that is used. Next slide, please. And we'll be losing the opportunity for a trail. This could be an amazing, beautiful trail that is being planned, but we're going to lose that, probably. Losing respect for Indigenous heritage. And there's a massive loss of access to nature for the Brampton public, having an intact trail that goes all the way up and down the Credit Valley to the headwaters and right down to even Lake Ontario. I'm an emergency physician. I see a lot of the mental health and physical health impacts that people have due to lack of access to nature, which plays a major role in people's health, which is often underestimated, and we will be losing this. Noting that most of our demographic do not have access to things like cottages and places that they just escape from the city. We're a sort of migrant, immigrant population mainly. Next slide. I'm almost done, thank you. When we develop it, it's gone forever. 75% of the Earth's surface has been altered. In Canada, our cities are based in the most biodiverse areas themselves. We've destroyed almost 99% of Southern Ontario's intact ecosystems. There's 1 or 2% left. And then we are doing these kind of insults where we're doing severe damage by, let's say, cutting off wildlife corridors. We should be actually protecting them vigorously. Next slide, please. An alternative is possible. All you have to do is, there's a massive farmland that's being developed, right? That's part of this development. House more people on the same land. You can make some low rise or whatever you want to do, but make more houses, more housing units. The developer can still make the same or greater profit, but you can save the forest and we can still make the trail. And that's the alternative that could be done. Next slide, please. And it is a beautiful place if you've ever been there. Underestimated by the ecological reports, which are paid for by the developer, but it is truly beautiful, and it connects the entire Credit Valley system. And when we develop it and when we do this damage, there's no going back. It's gone forever. And this is very important. And that's everything. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Okay, I see none. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Santos to receive the delegation. And is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. City Clerk, our next item. My apologies.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the next item is Councillor Question Period, item 12, followed by Public Question Period.
Okay, are there any questions by members of committee? I see none. Are there any questions from members of the public?
Mr. Chair, there are some questions. Just going to put on the timer. There is a 15-minute period for question period. So there is questions that have come in from Brampton resident Deb Bergeman. And there's a number of questions, but the very general ones and ones that are specific to item 7.3, which was referred, I believe, deferred, and 7.7 and 7.8. So I'll read the general questions first, and then I'll get into the specific questions. So the first question is, who is accountable for the decisions and approvals made during this meeting? Is it the current city staff who completed reports and make recommendations, or is it the current elected City of Brampton members of council? So perhaps I'll take a start at that question. So at the end of the day, it is the city that is responsible and accountable for the decisions that are made. City staff provide professional advice and implement the decisions that the city council makes. The elected officials make the decisions and staff will implement those. So it is a bit of a shared responsibility in terms of the municipal role in the development, the the planning and development process. Ultimately, implementation decisions rest with the private sector or public sector, as the case may be, for implementing development, but it's based on decisions that are made at the city, made by the elected officials, based on advice from the city staff. The next question is, considering each application is submitted independently, is anyone at the city, staff or elected official responsible to review the overall impacts that developments and redevelopments in the downtown area will have collectively? If yes, who?
So through you, Mr. Chair, and Peter, I can perhaps provide some response there. With respect to each development application that staff are recommending approval or refusal of, there is a robust technical analysis that's done with each of those. I think as those developments then occur, are constructed, bricks and mortar go up, there then is continued review of the technical elements and more social as well and artistic elements of a particular area of the city. And those are done regularly by way of not only development staff, as it is that when it is that new development applications come in, and we have to regard the context of an area as we're commenting on those new applications, but also there is regard for all of that as it relates to our other areas of planning and other realms within City Hall and the different expertise that is had at the city. All of that really is understood, and there is really continued recommendations and initiatives that are ongoing by way of city staff and by way of council direction through to staff to constantly look at improving the city. So it is a living matter that is dealt with not only by way of the development applications, but also through then continued policy work and further development application initiatives as well.
The next question is, as this specific downtown area is likely to see construction of a 30-story plus two 48-story towers of mixed use for a combined total of 1,510 residential units in the existing area, traffic area from Church and Main Street North to Main Street North and Market Street, with the main access point from the buildings being on Thomas Street. The question is, who is responsible to manage the traffic flow and congestion created by new developments in this area? And will the city be adding any additional municipal parking areas to accommodate visitors to this area for business, shopping, theater, or visiting others?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and Peter, I can provide some response there to start a response. But the matter of parking, maybe first off, is something, again, that relates to the continued initiatives that staff and together with committees and council continue to look at to make sure that the downtown core in particular really remains and really always improves with in regard to its health and really the business community and the enjoyment of the residents. Always want to make sure that really we're working towards improvement. With respect to parking for the areas, there are, as we all know, city lots already. There has been policy work done by our staff that is ongoing still, which is looking at the downtown parking arrangements and the city lots that exist and really trying to really help us all understand really what some next steps should be towards improving the parking situation downtown and whether there is any particular steps with an initiative that needs to be undertaken, such as some expansion and such. That's a matter that staff continue to look at. Peter, if you wouldn't mind maybe reminding me about the first part of the question that was had.
The first part was, who's responsible to manage the traffic flow and congestion created by any new developments in this area?
Yeah, and with that, perhaps I can offer that with each development application, especially the intense forms of development that are occurring more so within the city's downtown area with multi-story buildings, high-rise development. Traffic continues to be an item that we focus on intently, staff does and council. I think the particular consideration has to be had, though, with respect to not only traffic flow, but also creating the right number of residents within the downtown to really draw businesses, to sustain businesses, and to create a really exciting area within the downtown. Understanding that really that intensity that we want within the downtown does tend to create some additional traffic. The key consideration is really understanding and how it is that higher levels of transit can be utilized well to offset the amount of traffic occurring in the area. So we are all working collectively towards really growing the GO station and other higher forms of transit, including the light rail system as proposed for the Main Street corridor. All of that will help. But again, Peter, as you had really noted earlier, with really both staff, council being responsible for these things in an ongoing way, that holds true here as well.
The next question, one is specific to item 7.3, which is the report on unlimited height and density. That item was deferred to the September 12th meeting, so I'm just going to read the questions, but I think responses can and probably should be addressed at the September 12th meeting. Given this report does not identify any restrictions, how high is too high? If the incentive is to secure affordable housing, why does the report not specify a minimum percentage of affordable housing? Would 1% be a good enough incentive for Brampton? And the report indicates this incentive program will be for a 5-year period, after which time its effectiveness will be reviewed. Why would something which will have significant impacts to the downtown traffic and parking situations not be reviewed earlier? So my advice, Mr. Chair, is that can be sort of stood down until the report comes back on September 12th. The next is more of a comment on item 7.7, not in the form of a question. That item was approved as part of the consent motion. This is an application for an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, 151 Main Street North, northwest corner of Main North and Church Street West. The information provided in the report appears to provide a more thoughtful and proactive approach to development for a 30-story mixed-use building in this downtown location. Comments provided by the public were considered and some changes incorporated accordingly. And it offers a diverse option of units being constructed from bachelors through 3-bedroom units within the 361 residential units. So there is no question there. The final questions are in regards to item 7.8, which in many respects have already been addressed by Mr. Parsons in his response. And this is the application for the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 199 to 2020, or 221 Main Street North and 34 to 44 Thomas Street and 4 Market Street. The first question is Appendix 9 and 10, results of the public meeting and public correspondence received. There's a poor or lack of response to issues raised by the concerned Brampton residents. Who's accountable to address the issues, the concerns raised? And the second question is Appendix 11, results of circulation, the traffic information study, and this has been addressed by Mr. Parsons, raises concerns. Who is responsible to address these to ensure issues are addressed? So unless, Mr. Parsons, you wish to provide any more context, I think you had answered those questions.
Thank you, Peter. No.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And our last item is adjournment. So our committee's next scheduled to meet August 22nd at 7 p.m. I have a motion moved by Councillor Fortini to adjourn tonight's meeting. Anyone opposed? I see none. Motion